Welcome back to the Sideline Live podcast. You can follow us over on Twitter and Instagram at the Sideline Live. We'd love to hear from you. On episode 106, I'm delighted to be joined by Mayo legend and current Leitrim Senior Football manager Andy Moran. This episode is brought to you by GAA Coach, so be sure to check out our Twitter page at the Sideline Live for our latest giveaway with their coaching toolkit. You can check out their links in the description box for more. Hi Andy, thanks a million for joining me on the podcast.
Yeah, no, great to be here.
I wasn't sure what way I'd introduce you. The Movement Gym obviously had to get a shout out, Footballer of the Year, Mayo legend, but the Football Pod had to get a mention there with the lads.
Yeah, no, it was great. Really enjoyed it, to be honest, Orla. Like when you kind of you leave the kind of scene and you stop playing, it's funny to know which way you want to go. And my thing was I just wanted to kind of discover everything before I go in coaching in kind of the management side of it. And an opportunity arose with Tommy rang me one day. He said, would you be interested? Nathan Murphy rang me one day, would you be interested? And I'd never met Paddy. To this day, I've only ever met him once outside the football field. So, no, we just hit it off kind of straight away. And I think it worked really well. And I love listening to it now. James has gone in there. I love listening to it at times. I'd love to be still part of it. But no, I think it's a great product. And I think it's really like the things that you're doing here on your own podcast. Another thing, I think the Football Pod has probably made people more aware that there's football product out there. And I think that's a good thing for everyone.
Absolutely. And if you growing up, I obviously read your book and listened to the podcast, but for you growing up, I was interested kind of sticking with it at underage levels. You were saying kind of maybe at minor, you had started the first game, dwindled back to being taken off at 20 minutes to go and kind of dwindled back all the way to being in Crowe Park and being, you know, not even sitting with the team or sitting in the stand. Why did you stick with it at underage, and even though you had those early setbacks, to go on and to keep improving and to keep driving forward?
Yeah, no, it wasn't a straight line either. Or it was, I was very lucky to have a very good club team at the time. We'd, in school, we won the All-Ireland B, which we had a very good team as well. And there was 2 or 3 really exceptional footballers on that. And the funny thing about that team in Nathies is, I think 7 players were from Roscommon and 8 players were essentially from Mayo on the first 15. And it was a kind of funny set. And a lot of guys went playing minor for Roscommon and a lot of guys went playing minor for Mayo. And like I always was an okay player. I was always a better soccer player, you know. And but something kind of just struck me. Two of my friends, Stephen Drake, who's now my brother-in-law, and Sean Mangan, both got picked for the under-21 straight after minor. I went playing soccer for Longford Town, and there was always a bit in me. There was always a bit of grow in me for Gaelic at that stage. For some reason, it just kind of flipped. So I just started training really, really hard. Like I just started doing 2 a days, training really hard. Kind of quit college, came home, lived at home, just ate like a lunatic right through some of the stuff I wasn't eating, that I was eating at the time, which I thought was right. I now know that it wasn't the right stuff to be eating, but I was trying to do everything just to really catch up to the 2 boys, and then had a real kind of good club season that year. And John, the story was John Mahan rang for Sean and Stephen to go into the senior squad, and Kevin Cahill, who played for Mayo previously up to that point, just said, there might be another guy that you need to take a look at here. And John rang me, and so it was. I got called into the senior panel and played under 21 that year, and then away I went. And the love for the game was there, because after all the good mentors I had when I was a young person, I got a really good one in John Mahan when I got into the senior panel and under 21 team, and had a really good experience.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned as well in the book kind of your mindset at that age mightn't have been what it needed to be. Can you describe the evolution of your mindset from kind of starting with Mayo all the way to your final season?
Oh, it's completely different. If I started that time, when I came out of school, we all went down to Tralee in college, which was an outrageous decision. There was about 8 of us down there. We just went down for a party. I lasted 2 months. I came home. Just wasn't in a good place. Actually didn't really understand how the social life and the Gaelic football and the sport kind of go hand in hand. And so it really started moving then. I like, as I said, I kind of probably had my first drink after we won St. Nathan's championship, and then I probably went mad then for about 18 months like most young people do. But it was just that the kick when the 2 boys got picked for that 21s, then all of a sudden I said, geez, I really, really want to do this. Didn't realize it to that point. really wanted to do that. And we come from a town called Balladreen, which is caught on the border between Mayo and Roscommon, but also Sligo. And we always kind of deem ourselves as kind of outsiders within that group. So growing up, if you weren't picked, there was always an excuse there for you. From Balladreen, they won't pick you. You have Roscommon connections, they won't pick you because of that. But the reason they wouldn't pick you is because I wasn't playing well enough or I wasn't good enough shape. So my angle on it was, right, I'm going to be in better shape than everybody else. I'm going to train harder than everybody else, and I'm going to try to make myself kind of good at that sort of thing. I felt I was always good. The soccer kind of background always gave you a way to be good around the dressing room anyway. I was always a talker, always kind of doing that stuff. So it kind of really built from there. But then what really grew throughout my career, Orla, was the learning and how to get better. So when we got to 2008, 2009, we knew we were doing an awful lot of things well. At some points, it's kind of, I often laugh at that Donegal team and that Mayo team when it came in 2011. People just think we came from nowhere. We didn't. We were in a Division 1 league final in 2007 where Donegal beat us. And we were in a Division 1 league final, would you believe, the year that we got bet by Sligo and Longford. We played in a Division 1 league final that year against Cork. In that league, we bet Cork away, Tyrone away, Derry away, and Kerry away in that league. So we knew we were good players, but we knew discipline-wise we weren't doing what we needed to do. And when James came in then, you either did it or you got out. So obviously I was 27, 28, me, David Clark, Alan Dillon were probably the three old guys on the team at that stage. So he really leaned on us as we leaned on him to kind of build that kind of discipline side of it. And then the evolution of mindset just kind of took off. We got Keane O'Neill in, we got Kieran Shannon in, we got Donie Buckley in, right up to where Neil Fitzpatrick was, and it was just a straight line. And I kind of just built and kind of learned my game through that as well.
When you're in the peak of your powers, I'm not only talking about improving as a team, but for you, improving as an individual, is that something that you just sit down with yourself? Do you reach out to people? Obviously, video analysis comes in, but how do you improve individually as a footballer within a county setup?
Well, that's a great question. So I felt I was in the peak of my powers in 2011-12. Before I did my cruciate, I thought I was in a really good place. Actually, then in 2011, went up to international rules training, broke my leg. Then went to 12 and did my cruciate. And to be honest with you, I had 3 years there, 2012, 13 and 14, where I should have been at the peak of my career. I was 30, and that's when I always felt I would get to because my game wasn't about, I was never a David Clifford or a Shane Walsh or a Lee Keegan. I had no real natural attributes, really. So my game was about learning and try to learn the game and get better at the smart stuff. But when I got to that stage and all of a sudden I got to the point where I wanted to be in 2011, bang, the injury started kicking in and away I go. So I found that really, really difficult, and we'll talk about that later, I'm sure, but I found that really difficult. But how you improve while you're in there is I came back from them injuries. I couldn't make the team. I couldn't get back into it. James, all of a sudden I went from being captain, probably one of the most important players, to being a sub, and quite lucky at times to be coming on because my training wasn't evident in what I was doing on the pitch. Now, when I came on, I used to do okay, but it was a tricky one. So I started building things in my head of how can I do stuff that nobody else can do because my running ability totally left me. I used to be a wing forward where I used to cover a lot of ground and all that, but that kind of totally left me. So it was like I just came up with an idea, what can I do that nobody else can do on the team to get me back into the team? And that was staying close to the goal, winning the ball high up the field and away. And that's all I did. It wasn't rocket science. It wasn't anything revolutionary. It was just, as you said, a mindset change. And it really, really did work for me. And I just kind of built on it, really learned how you're saying, how can you develop through a setup, really learned what my own team did. So if Kevin McLaughlin got the ball on the 45, which way is he going to turn with the ball? How does he like to kick the ball? Can he kick it? Kevin was always tricky because he could kick it inside, outside. He could put any kind of spin on the ball. Where Aidan used to do nearly the same thing all the time. Cut in, cut out, kick it on the second. So you used to kind of just learn what they used to do. And then that used to make my movement better. So I used to just try to learn what other players could do and then try to develop through that.
Because that was something that I wanted to talk to you about, and I reached out to people for questions, and that was the number one thing that came up was your movement. Because you'd say to yourself, like, you probably, you didn't have a huge amount of pace, but geez, you won a lot of the ball. And there's great clips, I think, on YouTube, and there's one particular one that I used with my own team was the Balladreen match in 2020, where it actually looks like a basketball move to me, where you do a backdoor cut and Keane Hanley hits this ridiculous 30-foot hand pass into you. But when you're like, is that something you practiced on the field by yourself, is getting those moving patterns? How did you actually develop those little kind of movements that you would have done? Is it watching basketball? Is it other sports? What was it?
Well, first I get a lot of credit for that move against Brafey, but you said it there, that hand pass from Hanley. That's off his left hand. 30 years, so Australian rules comes into it. It shows how you can develop a skill. Them guys used to create so much on their left and right hand, and he just arrow into. It was probably a nice bit of forward movement, but his hand pass was just kind of ridiculous. But just on the movement side of it, I remember as far back as 2006, I was on the team, I was doing well, got dropped, got taken off before half time in a kind of final, got dropped, and I remember going to John Morrison and saying, John, what can I do here? And John famously said, "You're too fat, Andy." But that's a different story. But that was in his typical kind of John way. But he showed me how to turn. He actually showed me how to turn, and so he made me work on my turn. And it was, I know that sounds a bit silly, but I was already good at turning. But then he showed me how to turn my feet when I should be moving, so that when you're about to, turn and move the other way, that your 2 feet should be facing the same way, that you don't have to make a double movement with your foot, and all little things like that. And I just kind of learned how to move my feet, how I could move quicker. So if I was marking a Mark O'Shea, for example, who's just brilliant reader of the game, exceptional pace off the mark, and if I was slower than him and he was marking me from in front, I had to get him blind, so I had to get kind of turn. So I worked on my turn relentlessly. But then the other thing was, as I said to you, knowing where the ball was going to be before your opponent got it. So the way you do that, and everyone studies, I suppose everyone studies their opponent, as you were saying, on video analysis. So they say, how are your defender going to mark you? And you have to do that, but knowing what your own team are going to do. So if you have a girl or a fella coming up the field and they don't like kicking the ball, and you're 40 yards away from them and you're moving for a kick pass, knowing that this person is going to kick the ball, you are ruining your movement. You're killing your movement. So sometimes you have to make a dummy run for that person, so that when it gets to the kicker, that you're in a good position for the kicker. So it was just learning little kind of tricks like that, working on the turns, working on your short movement. And Tony McEntee, I said this in the book, Tony McEntee, in 2016, when I got back into the team, he said, "You're winning great ball, but it's too far out on the sidelines. You need to do it between the either 10 yards either side of the post." So then all of a sudden I was in training, tried to do what I'm talking to you about there within the perimeter of the 2 posts, and all of a sudden that brings you from maybe scoring a point or 2 points in a game to 3, 4, 5 points in a game, or getting 4 or 5 shots off, which made a massive difference for me kind of going into the latter bits of my career.
I've plenty of coaches listening that have underage teams or adult teams, and when you're trying to develop that in a player, is that kind of what you're talking about in training? Get them in a kind of confined space with a constraint to kind of develop that inside movement, and that teamwork really is what you're mentioned a lot between, let's say, midfield, half forward line with the inside forward, to kind of get that read of each other that you probably only really develop when you're playing, maybe a bit of video analysis, but to kind of have that instinct of, I know when X or Y turns, they get the ball in straight away.
Yeah, I think so, but we're gone so GPS mad, and don't get me wrong, with Leitrim we use Stat Sports, we're GPS, we use it all the time. It's brilliant service, and you need that. But if you're within a training session, you're trying to coach that, and you're a coach, but you're saying you need to get 6,000 meters on the clock, and you're trying to get fellas, that's where it becomes difficult. So you have to be really confident kind of in your own ability as a coach, to make sure that fellas are getting the right work in and moving a lot in the session as well. But I know you're going to ask about a quote later, but I'm reading not Pep Guardiola's, I'm reading Jurgen Klopp's assistant Pep Lander's book at the minute, and he says, I've written down, he goes, talent needs models, not criticism. And if you need a model, but you're telling someone to run 7,000 meters in a game, but you're trying to say, we want you to move like so-and-so, and they move 15 yards either side of the goalpost, that's 2 different problems. So it's about having the confidence in yourself as a coach to say, right, okay, what do you need to do? How can you do it? and how best can we get enough aerobic work into you, but we're also getting enough skill work into you. As a player, I think it was the Gooch that said it years ago. They asked him, when did you know you'd kind of made it? And I think now, I'm definitely paraphrasing here, but he goes something in the lines of, when I knew I didn't have to move. So Robbie Fowler said the same thing as a striker. We're so obsessed with running towards the ball. And if you look at Derry this year, and I know it didn't work out for them, and they're not the most expansive forward team, but at times they had 5 fellas inside the 21, because what they're doing there, they're staying close to the goal, freeing up the D, and it's a different sort of game now. So coaches need to develop it, but the forwards need to be smart enough and strong enough to say to the coach, if you want me to score, I need to be close to this D every time,
That makes sense. When you were faced up with a defender, Andy, you might be able to think of 1 or 2 players that really put it up to you, but what was the most effective style of defending that limited your movement? Was it like when people mark you from the front, were you kind of rubbing your hands together saying this is going to be a long day for them, or how did you find the most effective way of guarding your movement?
Type of player for me. See, pace wasn't a big thing for me, so it didn't really matter if they were that fast or that slow. But strong fellas with similar speed to me was very difficult. I used to use my strength a bit. A guy that kind of get really stuck into me, marked me really tightly, then all of a sudden the movement becomes more difficult. So that could be a game where you just have to run out, win the ball and lay it off, because if they're that strong, you can't get the distance between you and them, and the market shoulder to shoulder. It was really kind of difficult. But like players, like during the course of my career, that was evident with Mick Fitzsimons, I think, because Mick just got stronger and stronger and stronger. So when I first met Mick, you might have been able to hand him off, catch the ball, lay it off, and maybe go for a score. By the end of it, if you try to put your hand on Mick Fitzsimons, he'd run out through you. So it just kind of changed. So it was that power kind of dynamic. I'd have been fairly strong as an inside forward, but once that big strong fella. So in a Mayo situation, if I was marking Keith Higgins, I might have been okay. But if I was marking a Ger Cafferty or a Kevin Kane, I'd probably struggle in that regard,
Okay, interesting. A lot of younger listeners, kind of around the teenage age, maybe early 20s. But I watched a video before. I think you were speaking to Fermanagh, an underage team with them, and you were saying kind of advice to younger players was having a partner or a friend to go with you and be part of the journey. You said if you're looking out for someone else, you're already improving as an individual straight away. When did you learn this? When did you observe it? Did you have somebody in your corner at that time? Explain that one there.
I think it was a funny one. We always we were just very kind of strange as a town. We were just blessed with coaches. It was the funniest thing. And we're the most blessed generation that's ever come through our town. We just had 3 or 4 unbelievable coaches when we were young guys. And to me, it's the power of manipulation. It's like you're kind of trying to sell something. So if you were playing handball as a young person in the town, and we had a great coach called John Gaffney. I've often said his grandson now plays for Shamrock Rovers, Rory Gaffney. So he used to be our handball coach. And if you were going playing handball, you needed someone to come with you. So all of a sudden, you were in that kind of habit, in that mindset straight away. When you were like, I lived in a council estate growing up, Dalton Terrace, just down the road here for me. And like, I used to be always knocking on the doors of the lads, come out, you needed a goalie to take shots on, you needed, to do stuff. And it kind of just developed. And we just always had a group of lads of the same age that kind of loved playing football, that we just always kind of went to the pitch together. We always did that, and it did make the journey an awful lot easier and an awful lot more enjoyable. I remember picking a young Tom Parsons up, to see where Tom Parsons has went from where I used to pick him up when he was 19 years of age to being the head of the GPA. If someone could have video recorded that journey, like that's a Truman Show all in itself. It was just, that's an amazing, like, he comes from this young, really kind of brilliant, naturally talented footballer who can catch a great ball over his head, immature, to being this just leader within our dressing room in 2014, right throughout the rest of his career. It was just an amazing journey right through. So I love kind of seeing them things and kind of mirroring them and learning from fellas like that as well.
Okay, there was another quote I picked up on it during the chat. It was, the pitch wins you games and the clubhouse and the gym will help, but the pitch is what wins you games, because you kick the score, and the pitch is what gives you the confidence. When you were growing up and even during your career and in the peak of your powers, what did you practice on the pitch that gave you that confidence? Did you have a particular routine? Did you just start in close and kind of work your way out? How did you structure your pitch sessions?
Yeah, I think Sean O'Shea's quote after the All-Ireland final will probably go down in history. When he was in Kinmare, he was dreaming about Croke Park. And when he's in Croke Park, he's dreaming about Kinmare, and it's... I think that kind of sums it up. So like going back to when I was 18, 19 years of age, I remember I was looking up drills, how to make myself faster, how I can turn quicker, how I can run quicker. So I used to look at Sean Mangan and Stephen, the two guys that I'm talking about, both really good size, perfect kind of players for football, both really fast. And I was thinking, what can they do that I can't do? And then what can I do that they can't do? So I was trying to make myself a really good ball winner, really good on the turn, really good kick passer, things like that. But later on in my career, when I came back, and I definitely lost half a yard of pace after my cruciate, 100%. And I remember just the shot. I was thinking there was crowded defences at the time. Donegal had just won the All-Ireland. It was crowded defences at the time, and everyone was counter-attacking. So all I was thinking was, where was the shots? Where could you get the shots from? So you draw the arc around the goal and you say, right, you're not getting a shot from there. So where can you get the shot? So I worked on the shot from my bad side on my right hand side and just kept kicking that ball, just kept kicking it. And that's what I kept doing. And I know every player does this. So it's, where do I think I'm going to get the shot from? And am I ready to take the shot then when I get it? So, and that quote, like the one where the gym and the weights help, 100%. The pitch is the absolute key, and no more so was that evident this year in All-Ireland final. Sean O'Shea, semi-final kick, of course. David Clifford, Shane Walsh's both performance in the middle. Like, them guys have kicked more balls. Yes, they're hyper talented, particularly Shane and David. They're hyper talented individuals, but them guys have kicked more balls. I don't know if you heard James O'Donoghue on the pod talking about Clifford, and he said he just kicks the ball all the time. He just kicks, and they were taking shots from 35, 45 yards out, like if they were in their backyard shooting from 13 yards. And that's what I had to develop in my game. I wasn't as naturally good at that. Like when I was a young guy, I was in the soccer pitch thinking I was Del Piero, taking frees over a wall and stuff like this. But so I had to develop that into my Gaelic game. But the pitch is the key. And for us in Mayo, and you can only talk about your own evidence, is the Lees of this world, the Killian O'Connors of this world. Like, Killian has kicked ball to his fault, that when he's now 31, 32, his body isn't aching and stuff like that. But he's become the record scorer in the championship history. He's the best forward that's ever played for Mayo, that's not even a question. And he's just a remarkable guy, but he has kicked more ball than anybody else in that dressing room.
Mm-hmm. I want to ask you about something else, particularly with young people, I find, or maybe anyone in the GAA kind of any age, but balancing life with sport and identity. I suppose we sometimes, particularly intercounty players, talk a lot about identifying just as an intercounty player and kind of balancing all of that with their identity. And you even put it in the book, kind of you used to associate your self-worth with performances on the pitch, whereas, you know, there's so much more to life, and I think as you learned kind of with your family and with the gym. But advice to younger players on how to kind of bring this perspective in so they don't get too caught up in the winning and losing, because it's great when you're winning and you're winning All Irelands and you're doing great, life's going great, but when you're losing and nothing's going well for you, how do you kind of keep that identity kind of stable off the pitch?
I think it's a very difficult one. I think there is a period in your life where you do have to be a small bit obsessed by it, because to really get into the habits, to get to a high performer, I think you really need to be, there has to be an area there where you're obsessed. And if that's your college life and you're still trying to pass your exams and you're still trying to do all that, I think that's probably the best time to do it. But I do think there's an obsession element to it where you have to be. I don't think you'd do it, or if you weren't. But then when you're hitting you've done your degree, you might have a year out where you're really going after the football. There has to be an area there where someone is kind of minding you and coaching you and saying, okay, what's next? Where do we go? How can we make this a tiny bit better? And I think when you get to that element, that's the key. For me, my problem was at 28, 29, 30, I was still in that obsession stage. And it wasn't until Charlotte kind of arrived where that kind of, I still had the 99% of obsession, but I had an out, and I think that was the key thing for me. But I do think to go to the pitch 3-4 nights a week, to do your weights, to train on top of that, I do think there has to be some element at some stage of your life where you're obsessed, so you can build them good habits and kind of bring them through then, and then you kind of develop your life as you go along. And I think that's why college is so important. College is, like, people kind of dismiss the Sigerson and all that, but if Sigerson wasn't there, guys would just kind of go after this from 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, and then you wouldn't have your college ball and stuff like that, and stuff like that that can kind of fill that void for you. So I think that's important. But 25, 26, you've got to be looking at where you're going in your career. There's no doubt about it. Gaelic football, amateur sport, definitely holds your career back a tiny bit for a couple of years. So you need to be starting building that from there. And I do think the GPA are doing great work on that. I do think that Tom, since he went in there, has made a massive difference on that as well. Of course, I've biased towards Tom because I know him and I'll be talking to him. But I do think Paul had started it, and now Tom is really bringing that on as well. And I think that's where the GPA need to be focusing their efforts more so than anything else, because players need careers once they finish. Even last night on OTB, off the ball, they were asking, I don't know if you've seen it, the Brian O'Driscoll clip where they were asking him, Joe, when he finished, how was it? And he said there was 6 months there where he trained for a while and then he slipped off the wagon, didn't train. He didn't say he was depressed or anything like that. The word he used, he said, I was probably sad, that it was over. And even that's a good building block from 25 on. Start building, because at any stage new managers can come in and they can cut your career in half, and you need to have something then outside that,
Because there's a great clip from the High Performance podcast with Paul McGinley. I'm not sure if you listened, it's really excellent. And he made the good point of, he spoke about kind of with his career, he had his degree and he went into the tour school, and compared to 99% of the other lads, he had a backup, whereas all of them, they were so invested, everything was put on the tour school, probably remortgaging the house, all that stuff. And he was talking to a golf coach in America, and the golf coach said, I only want players that are just golf. I don't want a plan B, no plan B. Whereas Paul made the point of, he felt unburdened in his career because he had his backup. As a manager, how do you find it now being with players that either football is plan A or they do have a plan B? How do you kind of manage that dynamic, and how do you find it with players being burdened or unburdened by football and sport and life?
Yeah, I think, and I don't want to make this dismissive at all, you've guys like Keith Byrne and Ryan O'Rourke and guys like that right throughout our team in Leitrim who are absolute obsessive kickers of football, never leave the pitch, they're training all the time, they really want to get their levels up and stuff like that. But I do find in Leitrim, over the course of the pandemic, and we've such a young team, that there was always a career element there, which I think is a great thing. Like I mentioned Keith there, Keith is training to be a solicitor, an awful lot of teachers in our team, so an awful lot of them were career driven anyway, which I think is a good thing. And I think the pandemic probably helped a Leitrim in that regard, because they had an awful lot of games. They probably had 3 or 4 games a year. The resources weren't probably there to train as hard as the other teams had trained. So all of a sudden they kind of looked at it and they kind of went after it a bit, which to be honest, moving into their futures is going to be a good thing for them, So yeah, no, it's just like, to me, it's unless you have a balance, you have a work-life balance in it, because I didn't have it and it didn't work for me when my balance wasn't there. I definitely played my best football when I had my business running, I had my kids, I was married, and I was enjoying my football. My football definitely improved then. So I would say, just right throughout the career, you're always just trying to say to them, what are you doing next? What are you playing? We're only there a year, so we haven't really got that opportunity yet, but try to get them scholarships, try to help them make sure they're playing football in college, all them little things right through. I think they're going to be the key things for the D4 teams right up to Division 1 teams moving forward.
Mm-hmm. When you went in with Leitrim, how did you start? How did you get players committed, bought into what you were looking to do?
I think that's a work in progress still. I think... Joe, you go in like that. That's why when the Mayo job came up, I had to take myself out of that race fairly quick, because it was because I had sold a 3-year project to these boys, and it was if I was going to run after a year or try to run after a year, I don't think it had been the right message to put out there. So that's why I kind of just said straight away, no interest to me, we're moving on, because we that's what I sold to the lads. That's what they bought into, and away they go. And yes, what you'll see all over the next couple of weeks, you will see senior inter-county footballers and hurlers. Some of them are going to get on a plane and they're going to go for a year because they've been sitting on the visas for 2, maybe 3 years now. Some of them are going to go. I think Jack Savage was the first to commit to it and go to Dubai, and I think more are going to follow them. You know, but it wasn't hard. What you have in what I find in these smaller counties, you've guys that really want to improve. And I think what's been sold to people before is, oh, why would you play if you've no chance of winning? That's not the perspective people look at. People want to, in their life, they want to improve their education, they want to improve their family, they want to improve their football, they want to improve their skills. And what we're selling and what the boys want is improvement. They don't want all of a sudden to be challenging for Sam Maguire. They know that that's not where they're going to get to, but they want to see, okay, we're in a team here that's being looked after by the county board, which they are, have supporters that are willing to support and invest in them, and they're willing to kind of just go and try to get better in their own game, the game that they've chosen. That's what we sold. We got a really good S&C coach in called Lahi McKay from Dublin, brilliant guy, like really investing in them. County board invested in him, got him over the 12 months for the 3 years, which is key, because before what had happened is season would end, players would be left, they come back in, start again in November. So they weren't really getting that compounding effect of year 1, year 2, year 3. So that's happening, and the lads can see improvement in strength, they can see improvement in skill. Last year, I think Keith Byrne was either first or second top scorer in the whole country. You know, that hadn't happened to him before. You know, it'd be lovely if he got a Tailteann Cup All-Star. You know, the fellas can see them improvement, even seeing the likes of Keith and Emlyn on RTE radio and RTE television. I think they can see that improvement, and all of a sudden now Leitrim is getting noticed, and that's what players want.
Mm-hmm. Mindset wise, you've spoken about kind of the strengths, skills, bringing maybe kind of the back end up to a different level that was before, but mindset wise, how do you change the mindset? And maybe you didn't need to change it, but to kind of bring it to the next level of not only being here to compete, and I know the Tailteann Cup obviously will make a difference because you've more games, but to bring in that mindset of we can absolutely compete, and having the benefit of that Tailteann Cup goal that you can say, look lads, we have a very achievable chance here of competing for this tournament, this competition, rather than being maybe slaughtered in the first championship game against the likes of Mayo.
Yeah, I think you have to show them the evidence of that something is working. I think that's the first key. So we went back in training, went back in lifting weights, starting from the base level, getting the boys lifting weights, and then showing, like, so talk is very cheap. So a young guy called Jordan Reynolds playing for Mohill, excellent player, but had never won a game for Leitrim, like was never on the pitch for Leitrim, had minor 20s, 16s, minors, 20s, right up to senior, and never won a game. So yes, I can tell him to lift all the weights he wants. Yes, I can keep telling him that he's a really, really good player, but until he goes and does it and wins a game, that's when the penny drops. When we played Antrim, Jordan came on and he was just exceptional. I think he scored a point, had 3 or 4 assists, caught kickouts, and all of a sudden then he could see then, okay, I've worked hard, I've done my weights, I'm strong enough now to compete, I need to put more on this, I can score at this level, I can do everything. There's 4,000 or 5,000 people in Pork Sean, the noise is mad, and all of a sudden they begin to feel the atmosphere. So you try to instill it through words and through, but until the boys see it, it's a tough one. We played Cavan in our first game. And we got beaten, but we played really well. We only lost by 4 points and went down against Tipperary then the next week after that, down in Thurles, and Tip winning Munster titles 2 years ago, and we bet them and bet them with a bit to spare. And that game then the lads were like, okay, now we can play. Week after then we get beaten by London, and then they're like, okay, right, we can see that if we don't do the same work for London as we did for Tip, then all of a sudden there can be slippage there. So it's just, you have to give it stuff time. Sometimes managers can go in and it can work straight away and away they go. But at other times then it might take a tiny bit of time. And I think the guys are beginning to realise that. And the likes of Donald Casey and Keith Byrne and Ryan O'Rourke and these guys, Reardon O'Rourke, Mark Divilly, I think they could see the improvement right throughout the year, and they could see themselves improving and scoring at rates that they hadn't scored before. And I think then now in year 2 we're hoping that they bring that through again.
Mm-hmm. I had an interesting question from a friend of the podcast. What can we do for a kid from Wicklow/Leitrim to help them have the same dreams and ultimately opportunities as kids from Kerry and Dublin?
It's what you're selling them. If you're selling them don't sell them too quick in Wicklow. Wicklow are in Division 4 next year, but it's exactly what are you selling them that you're going to go and try to win an All Ireland, or are you trying to tell them be the best you can be at this level and let's see how far it takes us. So if you see that, like, were we going to beat Galway last year? Probably not. But the way we played in the first 20 minutes, the lads then can see, okay, hold on now. If we get a tiny bit fitter, a tiny bit stronger here, we competed with Galway for 20, maybe we can push that to 40 the next time we play them. And then maybe we can build. But if you're trying to sell somebody, like if I go into Leitrim and say, we're going to do this in year one, and it doesn't happen, then they're going to say, no, that's not. And again, as a kid from Wicklow or Leitrim, what's your dream? Your dream should be playing in Crow Park. It should be to play in Crow Park. Go and try to compete at your under 17s, your under 20s level. See where that takes you. And then when it gets to senior, see how quick you can get it. Don't be settling for bad standards. If there's bad standards, you have to speak up. You have to tell them. Don't be just kind of going along for the ride. And then, you kind of improve it. You bring it on and you improve it. And that's what we've seen in Leitrim. When we've kind of given the lads the forum to say, yeah, what do we need to improve here? They'll tell you if you let them tell you, because they know what's good and they know what's bad. So they'll bring it. But the dream I find when I see Sligo playing Cavan in Crow Park in the Tailteann Cup semi-final, that's a dream. Now the GAA have opened up that possibility for players. And like I got the opportunity to talk to Paul McNamara from Sligo after the game. He does something in the gym, one of the gyms that we have. And he just goes, it was unbelievable. Even though they lost, he goes, that was unbelievable. Now all of a sudden he's setting his dream to be back there again next year. He's not setting it to win All Ireland. He's setting it, that's his dream, and maybe to win a kind of title or be competitive in a kind of title. They're the key things, and then you can build from there.
Okay, interesting. I loved reading the book, but particularly I loved reading about Keelan Crowe, his role, his mindset, his ability within the team. How do you teach that or instill that in a player or a squad? Let's say, for example, you take maybe an under 21 team, or maybe a team that isn't really used to that kind of standards and levels. How do you instill that within a squad or a player? Can you?
I think you can definitely make it better within a group. But I think Keelan was very, very unique in his way. Himself and my brother-in-law, David Drake, who's on the squad, were just, for me and Killian, they were just brilliant, because when we were going into them 16, 17 finals, them two guys used to mark us. And they used to give us such a goal over. Like, you have to realise they were competing with Keith Higgins, Ger Calf, Colin Boyle, Chris Barrett, all these players that we know now. That Brendan Harrison, who was an all-star in 16, all these guys. So people say, oh, if he was that good, why didn't he make the transition into being a senior player? I kind of said to you, Orla, I struggled with a certain type of player. Keelan Crowe had all them attributes to be that certain player. Strong, similar speed to me, could play football, good under the high ball. I was never going to push him off. He was dirty enough to get, but the key thing for us as a team was he and David brought a level of intensity to training, knowing that they were fighting for that last position, or knowing that they weren't going to be on the 26. And to be honest with you, that is just a unique skill. And like, I've been in dressing rooms for 20 odd years, and very few people have it. And Keelan was such a unique person to have that. And when he did it then, and he was the 27th man, just say, he wasn't making the squad, then all the rest of the fellas had to follow him. But you need one leader, of that group to say, right, okay, let's go here. What we're going to do this, talk to them. I remember when David Clark got dropped for the 2016 final, the replay, he pulled the subs in and he turns around and he goes, right, lads, listen, there's no feeling sorry for ourselves here. We've a job to do. Let's go and do it. So there's unique individuals within teams that have the right level of maturity, they're at the right age, and they can do stuff like that. And Keelan was just kind of a remarkable person, and still is to this day. And I'd say he's hoping to win a county championship for the first time this year as well,
Yeah, that 2017 year, Andy, give us a bit of an insight on what it takes to become a player of the year. For you, can you give us that kind of, I took it from basketball coach, those kind of unseen hours that we don't see, away from the TV, away from, what us fans see. What does it actually take?
Yeah, well, 2016 was a really big year for me, because, as I said, I was captain in 14, had had a decent year in 15, had a decent year, came on in them Dublin games and did quite well in 15. 16, I just found myself out of the team and I could not get back in. No matter what I did, couldn't get back in. I came on against Fermanagh. I was playing quite well, but I forced 2 shots. I remember Tony McEntee going at me, and I was so frustrated because I was playing well for the club and I could feel that the form that I had in 2011-12 was right back there, and I was kind of excited by it. And then all of a sudden I got back in against Kildare. But what that showed me was that the fitness level and the energy level had to go a tiny bit higher. So I was in good physical condition, but I wasn't in the condition where I could play for 67, 68, 70 minutes. I couldn't do that over a long period of time. So at 45, 46 minutes, I was tiring. Still, hadn't when they say match practice, I hadn't that match practice in me. So that really kind of taught me to, right, okay, I need to play every National League minute here. I need to play all the games. I need to play really well, get my confidence up, and away I go. But the key thing for me was just kind of building that confidence through. So if we were doing a set of runs in training, I said, I kind of said to myself, a silly one, I just kind of said, right, okay, I need to win at least one run in every block. Now, for me to win one run, I mightn't be competing for the next 3 runs, but it was just a mindset to say, listen, I need to start winning here. I need to go. So that we were in South Africa on a holiday between the 2016 and 2017 season. We did really hard training over there with Conor Finn while we were on the team holiday. And that's where it started. So we just setting little goals like that for yourself instead of being a 2-point man in a game. The role was that I had to get to 3 points to make Killian's 9 or 10 points, me with 3, Lee probably with 2. So we're trying to hit that 20-point mark. So if I could get to that 3-point mark as a forward, that'd be very kind of important for the team, which we got there. The way we did that, how do you do that? What's your percentage of shots? So the aim was to take 5 shots in every game so that you'd score 3 out of your 5. So you'd be fairly confident that you get 3 out of your 5 shots over, and on a good day, then you could get 4, maybe 1-4, something like that. So it was just setting little targets for yourself, goals for yourself in terms of fitness, in terms of energy, keeping your body right, really setting on mindset. And you're going to ask about books later. A book arrived at my door August bank holiday weekend called The Obstacle Is the Way. I started reading that, and the things in it are perception, action, and will. And it was just perception. It's your story that you tell yourself. What do you tell yourself? So I was telling myself, I can compete, I can do this, I can work with Killian around the edges, and then just working away with it. And that's all it was. It wasn't anything different. But my goal against Kerry in 17, in the replay, Killian O'Connor gives me a hand pass across the goal that I palm into the net. He's a scoring machine. He's the top goal scorer that's ever played championship, and it's the execution of skills and the unselfishness by other players, and then I win the award. But it was his unselfishness in that moment and other people's unselfishness in moments, and then all of a sudden I win it. But it's a whole lot of different little things along the way. And listen, I'm finished now. It's lovely to look back on. I would take an All-Ireland medal any day of the week over it, but it's a lovely accolade to have. But I put it right down to little areas that you work on, and then just teammates all along the way. The Keelan Crowes, the Killian O'Connors of this world that just made it so easy for us.
How often are you thinking about football during that point or during your career? Paul Flynn kind of wrote an article before. It was, when you wake up, it was, okay, what can I do now today to give me that 1% competitive edge over yourself, over the Mayo, over his opposition? How was that for you, Andy? Was it similar? Was it just every hour, every waking moment? What was it like for you as a player?
The business was good for me because it does take me away, and I like being busy. Like when I was driving the car in terms of work, back in the day, I'd have been on the phone 4 hours a day, in terms of just talking about football, how we're going to plan training, all that sort of stuff, what we're going to do as forwards, all that. And where I got stuck into the business, it took my mindset away from that, which I found really, really refreshing, which was lovely. But I think about football every hour of the day. Like I don't think there's an hour, even now, Joe, if we were coaching the under eights up on the pitch, I'd be thinking, right, what do we need to do? How do we make it fun? I'd be looking at games, thinking about, like, even now with Leitrim, you're thinking, so James Clancy, who was my selector, went to Longford last week. So you're thinking now, who do we get in? How do we get it? Do I need to talk to any of the players? Do I need to ring anyone? And all them little things, I never stop. I never stop thinking about it. I really love the game. I it's given me and my family so much. It's just amazing. Like we've an uncle of mine passed away there this week, and like you look around the funeral, and the last time all them people were together was probably a Mayo All-Ireland final or another funeral or stuff like that. It's given me so much. I just love it, and I don't find it as a burden. I really, really love it. And when I was playing, I never stopped thinking about it, and now I don't stop. Like I'm thinking about it all the time.
Okay. You mentioned the All-Star trips a few times in your book about all the gym sessions, but there was a particular one where you bumped into Henry Sheflin in a gym. I think it was in New York or something. He was just off winning Player of the Year. From all the players you've played against, now coach, observed, know about, is there kind of a pattern with the elite players? Is there any common attributes that you see that just kind of, is there a pattern between the Keegans, the Sheflins? Is there anything you've observed that you can kind of put your finger on, or is it just a couple of different answers you have?
Yeah, there's a pattern between the personalities. So there's mavericks everywhere. Like in terms of like Keith down in Leitrim. Keith is like can kick right and left foot anywhere, but like Keith is his own man, and you need to kind of respect that as well, But then there's like he would tune me in as a Kieran McDonald sort of figure. He needs to be. You need to kind of bring him, help him, try to develop him if you can. But again, like he's such an exceptional talent, you need to kind of work with his talents and his mentality as well. And as I said, he's a high performer. He's trained to be a solicitor. He's a smart boy, So you need to work with that. But the likes of the Sheflins and the Keegans, they're different then again. So just to context for the listeners, like we're in a football all-star trip. Henry Sheflin is with us. I remember there was I think Kilkenny and Donegal won the All-Ireland. So there was a GPA function. So the hurling winning captain, I think, and the football winning captain or vice captain, because Carol was there. I'm not sure, but I just remember an image of Carol Lacey walking down Times Square with Sam Maguire and Henry Sheflin having Lee McCarthy with him. So I don't know why Michael wasn't doing that, Michael Murphy, but Carol was doing it at the time, I think. And so I just done my cruciate, so I couldn't play in the game. So I was walking around New York looking for this gym. Could not find a gym anywhere. I must have walked with 20 blocks, but I found one, and in I go. I'm looking at this program, and I've talked to Henry once when I did my cruciate, and I've never, I wouldn't have a relationship with Henry now, didn't have it then, just massive respect for looking from the outside in. And all of a sudden I'm doing these moves in the gym from Ed Coughlin, who was our S&C coach at the time, and this guy just appears from nowhere, and he just puts his head over the shoulder, and he just goes, Joe, what are you doing? What are them moves? Joe, he was so curious about the cruciate rehab and how he could learn from it. He had done his in the past, and he was trying to learn from what I was doing, not from me, but from my program. And I just found this fascinating, that in the middle of New York, like you're on about away from the lights. He wasn't putting pictures up on social media, Instagram, looking for love from followers or anything. He was doing this so that he could be the best, and he was returning to Kilkenny in good shape. And I just found this absolutely fascinating. But I got a similar experience with Cork in 2010 over in Kuala Lumpur on a trip. They just won the All-Ireland, and you'd swear they were still going for the first one. They were chasing it. Then you have the likes of Carol Lacey, lived with Carol in 2008 in Jordanstown, and that Donegal team had a perception of being messers. And don't get me wrong, they liked a good time on the road, and Carol was no different. But he trained, and Lee Keegan, getting Lee Keegan to stop doing 10Ks, 5Ks, running, stuff like that. Or like my best buddy is Barry Sonan, who's S&C coach for Arsenal, but he was our S&C coach. And Lee used to be driving him mad because he used to do so much. Used to do so much. And it's just little things like that. I just think they're always searching for something. They've always a bit of fear in them that someone is going to pass them out, someone is going to be better than them. And they've always I just feel that they've something to prove. And that attitude is I just think it's remarkable. And it's an attitude that I really, really admire. And you'd love if you had more of it. They definitely had more of that than I had. But these top 5%ers, the James McCarthy one, I just find fascinating. We're in Philadelphia. My last trip in 2018, end of 2018. So it was the 2017-2018 All-Stars. I was finishing up. I was close to being out the door. Didn't really know if I wanted to go back. Mindset wasn't in a great place at the time. James had just got the job, James Horn. But McCarthy he like his knee was swelled to a point like where he shouldn't have been training, that he was still, I was just like, this man is a machine, you know, and half of it was intimidating me at the time, I think, but it was just, they just all, do you know what I'm saying? They just all have it. The Keegans, the Sheflins, the Lacey's, the Michael Murphys, the James McCarthy's, they just all have this element of, there's a bit of nastiness in it, there's a bit of fear in it, but there's just the will to win in it as well. And I love that. And if you had 20 of them in your dressing room, wow, you know, it'd be just amazing.
There was definitely some mindset games going on during those All-Star trips as well, though. But I want to ask, how much of your coaching is shaped by your playing career, Andy? How much do you let it influence it at all? To what point? How do you manage your team? And I know you do a lot of coaching with Leitrim, but how much have you taken from your own playing experience in as your manager?
Yeah, I think an awful lot of coaching is done through personality. I'm kind of like I wouldn't be holding back my personality, and I'm not always kind of happy and enthusiastic. Like I do get thick, and like there's a different side of me where people don't kind of see that too often as well. But your coaching is definitely shaped by your personality, and I like people to come in, have energy, have fun. Our business is built like that. Our coaching is built like that, and that's the way it is. But through my own kind of playing career, like I think you build an awful lot of things through. I think you build an awful lot subconsciously in terms of Donie Buckley's, Keane O'Neill's, what they did well, how they kind of. Joe, you do drill sometimes and you go, okay, that's complete Donie Buckley drill, or that's complete Keane O'Neill drill, or that's the way they'd have done it, or James Burke, who was with us in my last year, the way John O'Mahony used to do it. An awful lot of that is built subconsciously, but then an awful lot of it is built in what you'd have done differently yourself. So, what I might have felt back in the day, if we did this differently, we could have won this differently, so I think things are built in both. And then some of it then is built on who you have. I had a great lesson last year, or I player managed our club team with Balladream. Oh my! I turned into a different person than I am altogether. I expected too much out of the lads. I trained them. If I did it for a second year, I'd have trained them completely different. I'd have managed them completely different. I challenged guys that I shouldn't have challenged. And what an experience! What a learning experience! And until you do it, I just don't think you can say, I'm going to coach this way, I'm going to coach that way, I'm going to coach the other way. Your key thing is your philosophy, and you hold true to that. But then after that, then you have to take the group that it is. I'm not coaching Mayo at the minute, I'm coaching Leitrim. I'm not coaching Balladreen, I'm coaching Leitrim. And then you have to develop around the personalities in that. And as I said to you, I mentioned some of them already. Keith Byrne, Ryan O'Rourke, Shane Quinn, Pierce Dolan, Mark Divilly, an awful lot of them are strong personalities throughout the group. So you need to maybe coach around their personalities at times as well,
Okay, interesting. Do you give much scope to work with individuals, kind of what we said earlier about your own career? Is that something you have time to do in Leitrim? Is that something you want to do? How do you balance that individual improvement as a manager?
Yeah, great question. The time is the key thing. Again, it's it's definitely something that I really, really wanted to do. But then all of a sudden you get into the coaching aspect of it. You're the main field coach, and then all of a sudden you're not doing the individual stuff you wanted to do. So it becomes tricky. It's something I'm trying to learn, try to get better at, and hopefully in year 2 we'll be further along the line with that. And so when you come in year 1 or into a job and you start off in October, you're only getting to know the players. You don't know what they need to work on. You're looking at tape, you're trying to look at video, trying to look at the Mayo game from 2020 or 2021, and then you're trying to build it. So this year now we know what we have. We should know better where someone needs to improve, what they need to improve on. And then from looking at the club games and looking at the games that we had this year, then we can kind of go and build on it.
Did you ever set core values or sort of non-negotiables? That term is kind of thrown around a lot with Leitrim. Was that kind of a conversation with the players?
Yeah, 100%. Again, within a dressing room, there's like punctuality would be a key one for me. Gear, looking the parts, being involved in team activities, all that sort of stuff. And then there's certain stuff on the pitch then as well, which we'll keep to ourselves. But 100%. But they're all. It's not reinventing the wheel. It's you're looking from other people to get them values as well. Of course, you have stuff yourself, but an awful lot of when you're within a team, either within work or within a football team, an awful lot of them core values are going to be the same for an awful lot of teams.
If I could give you the key to go into any team or of any sport in the world and be a fly on the wall for a week, who would it be?
Yeah, okay, that's a good one. I wouldn't mind being in the New Zealand dressing room now at the minute with Joe Schmidt. I don't know if you've seen that handshake, lad. I wouldn't mind that, but no, yeah, that would change. That would change. No, I was a Liverpool fan growing up. I'm not so much a Liverpool fan anymore. I just love kind of soccer and watching it, and so. But I'm a huge Klopp fan. I kind of love Klopp. Love what he kind of did with the club. How he kind of balances the egos, all that sort of stuff. So. Probably would have to be the Liverpool dressing room if I could get into it. You wouldn't mind getting in and seeing Paul Kinnerk in action down in Limerick and seeing stuff like that as well. But it's because that's just fascinating what they're doing. Even when Dublin were going, you'd hear Paddy talking about that it was all the simple stuff, improving the skills and all that. I think I suspect there was a tiny bit more than that involved in it.
Speaking of skills, what would be the most underrated skill in the game at the moment, in your opinion?
Kicking the ball over the bar. It's just without question the most important thing. And like, even if you look at the final, even if you look at the All-Ireland final, I was privileged to be at it to see Clifford and Shane Walsh doing what they did. But out of the other 10 forwards, I'm not saying they played poorly. Stephen O'Brien had a terrific game. Young Spillane played well when he came on as well. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying they played poorly, but they just didn't do enough of it. Like I looked at Rob Finnerty. I thought he had a really nice game, set up nice plays, great hands, lovely link play. But you're just looking at Rob and you're saying, obviously he's the Mayo connection as well. His dad played for Mayo. You're just looking at him and you're thinking, Rob, just kick the ball over the bar here, and you really wanted to take that shot, and that's the key thing for me. It's just you go out, you practice, you get the ball over the bar, and then you kind of move it on from there. The other one, just a more softer skill, is what we could take from soccer, is communication through the lines, in terms of I've seen kids playing soccer and going up to a soccer game here in Balladreen, seen them playing 12 soccer, and all you hear them is yapping, talking, mouthing, chatting to each other, telling each other, yeah, I'm onside, he's offside, step up, whatever, get out, whatever. And you hear them playing Gaelic then and they're on mute. I would love a coach at underage level to coach kids how to talk and how to communicate with each other on the pitch. I think it would make a huge difference.
Brilliant. That's the first time I've had talk on it, and I really like that answer. But we're going to move on to Sideline 7. It's the same 7 questions at the end of every episode, brought to you by RTP Physio, founded by chartered physiotherapists Donie and Thomas Divilly, based in St.Judes GAA Club in Templeogue, Dublin. RTP specialise in physiotherapy, return to play, physical health, performance. You can check out their website, rtp.physio, and their Instagram @physio_RTP for more. Question 1, Andy, what is your favourite quote?
No, I'm going to go with the one I used earlier, because I'm obsessed with Kerry producing these number 13s over and over and over again. It'd make you sick, but it's like you go from Shee to Fitzgerald to Gooch to Clifford, who's probably going to be the best of a lot of them. And I'll just read it to you again. Talent needs models, not criticism. I feel in my own county of Mayo over the past, them sort of players got criticised, not given a model to say, let's copy him. And in the book, that Pep Lander's book, in that it's Harvey Elliott is there, and they've now teamed with James Milner to show him, okay, this is the way to do it. Let's go here. They've shown him how to do it. I think we could learn an awful lot from that.
Okay, brilliant. Question 2, what's the best sporting event you've been to? And you can pick one as a fan and one as a player.
For me, there's two that step out to me. Miles as a player, it's Limerick. We lost both of them, would you believe? Jesus, that's not good, is it? But Limerick 2014 was just an amazing event. Just a really cool thing to be part of. I remember I was captain, Sean Fitzgerald was captain. That was the only time I've ever seen the parade actually going the full way, because we were just like, one was you weren't giving them an inch, but then the other thing was it was just, atmosphere was insane. Secondly, the 2017 All-Ireland final was just an unbelievable event. The semi-finals were great, but the final, I just love All-Ireland finals, so that was it. And then I'm going to stick GAA here. As I said to you, I love it. Galway Armagh this year was just like Jenny, my wife, Jennifer, my wife, was beside me. She was screaming at the pitch with no loyalty to any team. You know, like, to get to that level. And I remember Mayo Kerry was after, it was such a damn squid. It was just like, can we go home? Everyone was so tired after the game. It was just amazing. And then to be at the All-Ireland final, to see David Clifford winning his first All-Ireland final, for us as West of Ireland people, to see Shane Walsh playing the way he played, it was remarkable, and it was a great treat to be there. So I just love All-Ireland finals. I find it the biggest day of the sporting year for our sport, and it's the sport I love, so that's what I pick.
Brilliant. Question 3, what's been the biggest setback or challenge so far in your career, and how did you react to it?
I think it was the injuries, definitely. As I said to you, I felt hitting. I always felt when I got close to that 28, 29, 30 year age, I'd have learned enough and I'd be going in the right direction. We did well in 11, did well personally in 11, and then bang, injured, missed the Australian trip with Aussie rules, injured in 12, injured in 13. And it was a horrible kind of 3 years. But then how I reacted was, I think we've talked about it through the podcast, struggled to get back into the team for a long time, but then all of a sudden got back in and finished out my career the way I kind of wanted to finish it out.
Question 4, what is your biggest achievement on or off the pitch?
That's very easy. It's kids, family, business, playing for me, so in that order.
Brilliant. Question 5, looking back, what advice would you give your 18-year-old self down in Tralee partying away?
Yeah, I know the big one is just to be patient. I think, I came into that team with Conor Mortimer and Kieran McDonald, and everyone wanted to be Conor Mortimer and Kieran McDonald. And when you look back, you're like, you can't be that person. You just need to be yourself and be patient with yourself and give yourself time. I have told myself, start a business. If I had my time again, I'd start a business at 18 years of age, without question. Just kind of love it. It teaches you so much about the way kind of money works, the way kind of the world works, what are the pitfalls. And instead of learning them at 32, 33, I'd like to have learned them at 18. And then just learn the game is the third one. Just be patient and learn the game. When that penny kind of dropped at me to say, right, okay, I'm too slow here. I don't have the aerobic fitness I once had. How do I kind of learn the game and turn that into an advantage, not a disadvantage? Then the game became very easy,
Very good. Question 6, who would be your dream dinner guest and why? You can open up the table to a few people if you want.
Yeah, I'm very boring in this. I absolutely idolized John Barnes as a kid. Still kind of fascinated with him. He's a bit mad in the head too, which is mad. Didn't like Roy Keane, would you believe? I don't know how this is, but I think it was because I liked Liverpool so much. Didn't like Roy Keane as a player, but absolutely adore him now, to be honest. I would watch Roy Keane clips on end at the minute. He's brilliant. I just find him fascinating. I just never really got him. And I think I'm beginning to I'm not sure I get him, but I'm fascinated by him. And then Matthew McConaughey would be the other one. I just think he's read his book. He seems like he's been off the charts, and he's cool enough cat, isn't he?
Okay, it is. Yeah, I think Roy is now the most popular dinner guest. I think nearly everyone, every second episode, I think he's mentioned. But final question before I let you go, because you've been so generous with your time. If your life was a book, what chapter would this be called?
Yeah, I think I'm always going to be kind of stuck with this book. The Obstacle is the Way is the book. It's Ryan Holiday. It's a brilliant book, but it's broken into 3 sections. It's called Perception, Action, and Will. And for me, the perception, first third of that book is the most important part of Anton. I was never too bad with the action, and I was never too bad with the will to go and do it. The perception I struggled with in terms of, an event would happen, and you'd be worried about how everyone else would view the event. But the only truth in the event is how you view it yourself. So I was kind of, geez, that's very deep. But yeah, but you know what I mean? It's okay, what's true here? Like, so if you take it, for example, Mayo never had forwards. If you actually dug into that, you'd be like, Kevin McStay was the chief analyst in thing. Now he's the Mayo manager, and people see him as the Messiah, which is, hopefully he is. Kieran McDonald is revered all around the country. Conor Mortimer was as good as forward that I had played with. Killian O'Connor was the best Mayo forward I'd ever played with. 2 All-Stars, top scorer of all time, mad stuff, And like, you look at the likes of Kevin McLaughlin, Diarmuid O'Connor, Jason Doherty, all these guys, Ryan Donoghue, Tommy Conroy, it's mad. So just even perception within the game and then perception within life, I think that's where I'm going to stick, I think, for the rest of my life, to be honest.
Okay, brilliant. Andy, look, thanks a million for joining me in the podcast. I'm just going to wish you the very best of luck with Leitrim, with the gym, with everything and beyond. And thanks again for coming on.
Thanks very much, Orla.
Big thank you to Andy for joining me on the podcast today. I thoroughly enjoyed our chat and I hope you got something from it. I'll be sure to leave all of his social media links in the description box below, where you can also find the links to our sponsors, RTP Physio and IGA Coach, who I'd like to thank for supporting the show. As always, if you're enjoying the episodes, please do leave a rating and a review, as it does help the show grow. As always, thank you for listening.